Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back, and it's off the back of a weirdly disappointing 2-1 victory over a struggling and already relegated Southampton. A game where it looked like it was going to be classic Fulham slipping up against the team that cannot get points for love nor money this season, and yet we come away with a 2-1 win. It's a victory that doesn't really feel quite like a victory in some ways, but there's a lot to talk about with this one. Here, joining me today, we have Elton. How are we going, Dad?
I'm very, very well. I know exactly what you mean. I concur. That was a strange feeling. Your mum and my wife kind of said to me as I returned from your house, "But they won. Why are you so miserable?" Um, and yeah, I couldn't really explain it. But I guess we should be positive about the fact that we always talk about the fact that we shouldn't care how we get the 3 points. So yeah, I'll try and be happy before the end of this.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We both sat on the sofa after a last minute winner, kind of looking at each other, going,
We
"Shit,
said
all right,
nothing.
well, 3 points it is then. I guess we'll just move on from that." Here also joining us today, we have Luke. How are we going, Luke? Good to have you back on the pod, mate.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I'm happy. This is the first time I've been on that we've won. So good. Hopefully that's a good omen for the rest of the season. A little bit deflated from the victory, but I guess we'll get into that a bit later. But it's good to get the 3 points against what can arguably said is the worst team in 18 years in the Premier League. So at least we didn't lose to them or draw to them. So happy we got the points onwards and upwards, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel a little bit like that, where, like we've all sort of said, it didn't feel like a very positive victory off the back of that. It was one of those games. I know beforehand we were talking in our little WhatsApp group, and I think it was Dave said, how are we all feeling today before this one? And I just said, I don't really want to think about this game, to be honest, because it just feels like one of those times when we're going to slip up. The 3 points that we've all got, not even penciled in, this one's in permanent marker, let's be honest. It should be at least 3 points in the book, but it just had that feeling about it. And right from the very off, let's talk about the starting lineup. Few changes. Firstly, we saw Harry Wilson come into the team. We saw Robinson obviously not even make the bench. Smith Rowe came back on the bench. We hear now that Muniz is out injured potentially for the rest of the season. Luke, I'll throw to you first. Your thoughts on the starting lineup for this game and the changes that mostly seemed fairly enforced on Marco.
Yeah, I don't think there's much he could do about it, to be honest. Didn't really look too much into what happened to Robinson, but I think Sess did okay attacking wise. Defensively, he's still a little bit suspect. And if we were going against a strong winger, we would have been found out. But luckily, we're only against Southampton, so I think Willian did okay. He was pretty much our predominant attacking outlet, so I think he did pretty good for a bloke with old legs. So it's good to see him back. It's good to see Harry Wilson back. And fighting fit. He was disappointed with himself when he came off that he didn't have more of an impact on the game, which is positive. I think he will, over the next few games, or towards the end of the season, I think he'll have more of an impact in terms of our attacking. But we did lack something in the middle, I think. We weren't dominated, but we would have been against a better side, but we definitely weren't the dominant force in the middle that we should have been. But as you said, that's because of Marco's forced hand.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. You do say that was forced. I'd say in the middle was probably the least forced. We obviously went with a midfield three of Sander Berger, Iwobi, and Pereira, with Iwobi sort of sitting in the 10, Pereira in the 8, and Berger in the 6. Dad, it was obviously a decision to rest Lukic. He got bought off, probably when he didn't need to be bought off against Chelsea. Your thoughts on resting Lukic, who has clearly been one of our better players this season? Do you think that was the right call from the start?
Well, who knows the truth of it? He's had a fair amount of work to do, but maybe I don't really know. Is is Robinson's niggle even potentially worse than we think it is, or than we know it to be?
I
Um,
think it is, just to jump in there. By the sounds of things, it's going to be end of season, immediate surgery. It
yeah,
sounds like he is struggling to get through this season at the moment. So a rest
yeah,
sort of makes sense at this stage against Southampton, I'd say.
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. But it's funny, isn't it? I always talk about this Fulham side as being a really, really well-oiled machine, but always vulnerable. And we just don't have the backup to bring in like for like in terms of quality. So it's really tricky when you take key players out, because you run the risk of really unsettling things. Um, Look, perhaps this was the only afternoon that I'd be okay about Sess at left back. Um, but he did okay, because as Luke said, he didn't have a huge amount to deal with. Um, Loved seeing Kenny Tete back. I didn't think he
Hmm.
had was amazing, but really good to see him back. And I hope that everything he does in the run in um, makes him keen and happy and revitalized to want to stay here. Um, yeah, I thought the commentators, I think, were right on our coverage when they were saying that um, Fulham just weren't moving the ball around very quickly, and I guess that has to be down to our midfield,
Hmm.
and because I thought Willian was very good actually as an outlet. I thought he was moving the ball around very quickly, and as he always does, intelligently so. But it looked a bit lackluster, and it does kind of worry me that this unit seemed to like the tempo being dictated by the opposition, and then they'll meet it or try to match it, but they're not very good at setting a high tempo against a lackluster side who are just sitting back. And yeah, um, again, in terms back to the lineup, kind of, I'm disappointed that Rao's kind of got his spot back, not in a nasty personal way, but I'm just much more for Mooney's. I think he's just there's just more about him. I just feel more excited and more. I just feel there's a greater likelihood that we're going to do something special when he's there. And I was actually disappointed with Raul yesterday. Pretty bitterly disappointed.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, let's get into the game itself, because there's a lot to touch on in terms of Jimenez's performance and a few others as well, I'd say. So I guess right from the start, it did look a little sloppy. I'd say Fulham just, with the number of changes that came in, Wilson obviously with his first start since, I think since December maybe, or January. Um,
January, yeah.
Kenny Tete obviously still looking for minutes. Iwobi playing a little bit out of position, having played on the wing quite regularly so far. Willian obviously getting a start as well. We haven't seen him start that often. Sess at left back. There were a lot of changes, to be perfectly honest. And so it was not surprising that we took a little bit of time to find our feet. Even once we did, I think we were still a little off. A lot of balls being given away really stupidly. We kind of made Southampton look like I wouldn't say a good side, but a half decent side that were sort of put together and could play a bit of football, which is fairly damning, I'd say, for a side that is struggling so badly this season to actually look half decent against us. And look, they made the initial breakthrough. It's a clumsy challenge, giving away a free kick. Um, it's actually a brilliant free kick whipped into the box, and a good header. Leno can realistically do nothing about that because it's nestled into the corner nicely. But Luke, at that point, the goal goes in. Southampton take a 1-0 lead after just 14 minutes. Fulham looking a little in disarray. How did we feel this game was going to pan out after that? Because it felt to me very much like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. As soon as they went 1-0 up, you just knew they were going to go back to a low block, 11 behind the ball. which is something we've struggled breaking down all year and last year as well. So just teams against low blocks, we don't seem to have any hope to go through, at least confidently anyway, unless there's a moment in individual brilliance. I think Tete and Wilson coming in, having their first starts for a while was a bit of a mistake because they don't really have a good attacking combination there. So that's why I think all of the attack was down the left. But yeah, as soon as they got the goal, stress, panic, I guess, probably the best way to put it. One of the things that I've looked at over the last couple of weeks across the Premier League, a lot of teams are changing their keepers in and out. We don't have that luxury. So if Leno has a bad game, I'm not saying we need to get rid of him or sub him off, but we don't have an option there. We don't have an option to freshen it up. So this is one of the things that's a little bit concerning for me moving forward, is what you said earlier, Elton, our depth in key positions, and goalkeeper will be one of them as well. I don't think there's a lot he could have done there, but sometimes having someone behind you who's challenging for your position can help you move forward.
Well, we were talking about this earlier in the week, and I'd go further than that and say it'd be nice to have the option, sure, of freshening it up and having someone chomping at his heels and creating some pressure for that spot. But I actually think I'd go further than that, a lot further than that, and say that it's downright risky business and almost insane that we don't have a Premier League level second keeper. You know, you could argue that look, Bender's young, why not? You know, he's shown something along the way, but we've seen him on a few outings, and it makes us nervous. We can't possibly be happy. You know, Leno keeps us in games. He's worth points to us, and has been a brilliant servant to us over the last couple of years. If he gets injured, we are screwed. I really believe that. Look, as we approach the end of the season, maybe that becomes less and less of a real burning issue with every week that passes. But one thing about yesterday when we went a goal down, I thought it's the 14th minute. It was the 14th minute, and I thought the good thing is there's plenty of time left. If we went a goal down, like 1-0 down at like the 65th or 70th minute in the game, it doesn't matter who the opposition are. I get really worried. Our form on these sort of scenarios is not great. So I didn't panic. I thought they weren't good enough, and they were unlikely to really come out and attack us further. And I wasn't completely flustered by that. I was kind of annoyed and disappointed, but credit where credit's due. That that was a good free kick and a nice little bit of skill to put that in the corner. You know what I really and again this is another recurring theme. What worries me is that I really think part of the reason why we don't respond well, and maybe part of the reason why we're sluggish in moments and fade out of games from time to time, is that leadership, that we lack leadership. You know, when Robinson, great player for us, wonderful servant, looks like a lovely bloke, but you know, he's no Churchill, is he? And you know, I want that old prick Anderson, the guy who we hated at Crystal Palace, the guy we loved at Fulham. I really want him with the armband because I think he'd take it up a level or two. And when, you know, someone who's got a bit of football IQ, and when he sees that things are not going right and the tempo's wrong, he starts yelling at players and getting people wound up and focused on the job at hand. And, you know, kind of Silver's voice on the ground. We're missing it. And I think that's part of the reason.
I think that's an interesting off-season conversation to have because, you know, Tom Kearney obviously has been our captain for a very long time. he has been a regular starter for a long time for us, and it's just in the last couple of years that he has really drifted away from that. He's getting a lot less minutes on the pitch, and therefore he has a lot less influence on the pitch, and we don't have a genuine captain out there. I mean, we had players like Mitro taking the armband for a long time. I think Polina took the armband a couple of times as well. They're people with big personalities and big characters on the field, and so it makes sense to have them as captain. But Fulham are in this sort of weird interim space where your club captain barely ever gets on the pitch. When he does, he's sort of thrown the armband, but it's kind of too late at that point. We've had Robinson taking the armband for the majority of the season. Leno takes the armband as well. But I think we are missing. There's definitely players out there who are captain material. I'd say Anderson is one of them. Bassey is probably someone I'd say is potential captain material at some point. He does it all on the field. He leads by example mostly.
Sure.
And he's always talking. He's always pointing around. It's what you want to see from your defenders. I wouldn't mind seeing him throwing the armband, possibly not quite yet, because Anderson is obviously the step above him at the moment. But yep, as Steve Reynolds says in the live chat as well, Sander Berger, a really good option as well as a potential captain. There's definitely people there, but I do think we're missing a Polina type, and there's a lot of chat in the Discord at the moment about a potential return for Polina being on the cards. I would love to see someone with that presence about them come in and become the captain.
But we've got one.
I think
We've got one.
Anderson he's not far off being a good captain, but he's potentially a little too quiet for me. I think he winds people up quietly, and I like that in a player. But you want someone who's a little more vocal and a little more in your face. And I think Polina was really good at that, just being on top of people constantly, making those big tackles and really making those statement pieces that you want from a captain. I think we're missing that. And I'd like to see us maybe think about it in the off season and change our captaincy structure. I know TC, realistically, if he signs a contract extension, he's club captain for another season, but we probably need a bit more stability with a captain going forward. I think Leno's a good choice as a captain, but you don't have that influence when times are tough to be able to pick people up from your own box. And when you're trying to break a low block, for example, you need someone in there, in amongst it, geeing people up and revving up the team. And we just don't have that at the moment. So I definitely agree that it's something that needs to be talked about. And look, we went 1-0 down, 14 minutes in. Like you said, there's a lot of time to get it back from here, but it was a disappointing first half. We had a couple of chances, not that many. And I'll refrain from talking too much about Jimenez because I do want to go into that in depth a little bit. But he did miss a handful of good chances where he probably should have done better. One that really sticks out is a volley that we've seen Muniz put away a couple of times this season, and Jimenez connects with it and puts it a country mile over the crossbar. And it just felt like it wasn't going to be our day at that point. And at halftime, going in 1-0 down, it really did feel a bit dire. And so I personally I kind of was a little bit surprised that we saw a couple of subs at halftime. We saw Berger and Pereira both pulled off for Adama and who else came on?
Lukic?
Adama and Lukic, sorry. Good changes in my mind. Luke, your thoughts on the changes at halftime? Firstly, were you expecting Marco, someone who doesn't often make changes that early, to make those changes? And secondly, do you think they were the right changes to make based on how the game was panning out?
I probably wouldn't have brought Adama on, I don't think. Not for an entire... He didn't really have that much of an impact. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I would have liked to have seen Lukic and Berger together again. I still think that's easily our best midfield, them two. And then potentially put Andreas in front of them, who could be a good captaincy shout, considering he's so chirpy and he runs pretty much all over the field. So, but that's a conversation for another time. Who knows if he'll even be at Fulham next year? I always get nervous when any team makes changes at halftime because it means something's going wrong, or potentially the setup is incorrect. So clearly, Marco thought we weren't doing something there. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest, but I thought Andreas was doing okay. I don't know why he had to come off. Clearly, it was tactical.
Yeah,
I
I thought
didn't.
Pereira was playing
Sorry,
well
Jack,
as
go
well.
ahead.
Dad,
Yeah.
no,
No,
well,
no.
I'll let you crack on. I was just going to say I thought Pereira was actually playing quite well. I was surprised that he was dragged.
Yeah, same. Same. He was doing okay. I mean, nothing outstanding, but he certainly wasn't playing badly. And over the last few weeks, I think he's been pretty good. I don't know why we didn't start with both Berger and Lukic, and then to swap one for the other was kind of just as strange to me. But maybe Marco felt, what's the point in just having a solid midfield? We actually need more attacking threat because we don't get a lot of attacking threat from our midfield at all, or not those two guys in 6 and 8 at all. I thought Willian was, and I know I'm a massive fanboy, but I thought he was easily one of our best players in the first half yesterday. And again, I'm such a fan of his. I literally think in a 9 lung, he can be more effective than most. And so I wonder really, because you've got to have a certain level of fitness to play in the Premier League, and do you really completely run out of legs where you can't even move? A lot of what Willian doesn't involve a lot of running. He's a crisp passer of the ball, and his brain twitches at light speed. He knows he's got 2 outlets before he even gets the ball every single time, and so he doesn't have to do a lot of running. I guess if you he's got an opposing wing back and he's getting really stretched, he's got to do a lot of tracking back and running to defend. That's a different situation, but that's not what we were facing. Having said that about Adama, he's been very disappointing the last few weeks, but I think Fulham's been disappointing in the use of Adama. And that's kind of troubling as to why we don't seem to be able to get that right. And before I say any more about him, let's not forget that he actually got an assist yesterday. And it was actually pretty peachy cross. It was a good cross. But more about that later. Yeah, he's a funny one, Adama. I've thought about this, and I just wonder whether we all see him as this special kind of player, almost like a hack, that has sort of one specialist move in him, and that is to sit on the halfway line, wait for the ball over the top, run onto it, and hopefully distribute it really quickly to one of our players, and not try and do very much more than that. And I really think that the way the fan base kind of view him and his value to the side and what he thinks he is a little different. Because, and it sounds incredibly disrespectful, but I think he doesn't seem to only want to play that role. He wants to play a pretty conventional winger type role and get the ball and dribble it in and kind of jink and cut inside and then put the sweet cross in the air into the box. And sometimes it comes off, but a lot of the time he loses the ball because he carries it a yard or two too far, and or we don't use him, or he's in the wrong position to even make the run. It's a really frustrating one because I think we've sort of missed a trick at many a time when we really could have had a get out of jail card against a difficult formation. It was really blocking us. We just haven't seemed to be able to use him properly.
Well, I'll interject there because I think we are kind of making assumptions on Traore. He has 6 assists this season, which is the same number as Iwobi. He's got 2 assists more than Pereira this season for us. I actually think he's been very good. He hasn't scored the number of goals that I probably would hope for from a winger. I think that's a big issue across the board with all of our wingers this season. But I also think that the old idea of Adama is that player who you put a ball over the top and all he does is use his pace to run on in behind defenders, streak away and score these big counter-attacking goals. I actually don't think that is where his value is. I think it's what we saw on the weekend where he's one-on-one with a defender and he gets to the byline quicker than a defender can because he's got that fast twitch ability to be able to just jink and get away from his defender quicker than anyone else can. The defender doesn't have the ability to react, and so he gets to the byline and clips balls in regularly. And that's exactly what he does for the Sess goal. He beats a defender one-on-one, he cuts the ball in, and Sess puts away a really good header. The other thing he did during the game as well was when he cut inside across the edge of the box, laid the ball off to Willian, who hits the post. That could have been a second assist for him. He put in the ball, I think, for Jimenez that Jimenez should absolutely bury with a header that goes straight at the keeper. Like there's the potential for Adama to walk away with 3 assists on the weekend. And if not for better finishing from Jimenez and a little bit of luck from Willian, we'd be talking about how Adama came on and changed the game. I think we're being a little too harsh on him because we want him to be that player who streaks away from opposition defenders and gets in behind. But I actually think Marco sees him as a different style winger than we all expect, because we're looking at that sort of FIFA style winger where he's got 99 pace and you just put the ball at his feet and he runs away from defenders. I don't think that is actually the ideal Adama. And I saw someone, it might have been Cottage Tactico, who did an analysis on Adama from a few years ago. The problem Adama had and why he wasn't scoring as many goals, and we saw it early this season, was he runs at full pace and actually doesn't have the composure to finish really well or to assist really well. And when he actually slows down his running, you see a better end product of him. And I think that's what Marco's trying to get out of him, is to actually slow him down a bit. And we don't want that just extreme pace that we used to see with players like Abubakar Kamara. Like, you're just looking for someone to be manic and run hard. I think we're actually trying to get something a little more out of Adama. And I would have liked a little bit more out of him this season, but I don't think he's had a bad year.
Well, he started very well. He started really, really well.
Yeah.
And then he dropped off. Did he get injured? I can't remember. But he certainly dropped off.
I think he did have a little injury this season, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a very good debating effort, Jack, and technically countering what I said there. But I am still about the FIFA 99 because I think he's special. And I think what it needs is a tweak of all of that, because I don't think he's good enough to play a conventional kind of winger role, notwithstanding the fact that I thought on 2 or 3 occasions he used his pace brilliantly from a standing start to get to the byline and get crosses in. It was very, very good and very useful, and very few players could do that. So excellent. But I still think if you use him correctly, he's I'm going to bring a new word to the Urban Dictionary. You already tried to drop twitchability into there, which is not a word, by the way. He's undefendable. You cannot stop a guy if he actually if you do put the ball in. But the problem is he just hangs on to it for too long.
Well,
Yeah.
a point of information. I swear he got run down quite comfortably yesterday.
There was a moment. You're right. You
expect him, and I just don't think he's that player anymore who has that insane pace. They constantly pull up those stupid stats of top speed of players in the Premier League, and Adama doesn't seem to make the list. and I think he
That's
used to
because
top
that's
that
because he's
list
not from the top six.
comfortably.
He's not from the top
No,
six
no, because
clubs.
I think Robinson makes that list. But it's
Really?
basically when they use their GPS tracker and they track the top speed that was reached during a game. Adama's just not hitting those lists anymore, which is
I
kind
reckon
of
his
surprising.
acceleration. I reckon his
That
acceleration, if not his top speed, is incredible.
I think it's
Yeah.
his acceleration which is the key. But that's what I'm saying is when he gets in those one-on-one situations where he basically stands up a defender, they're standing still next to each other, and his ability to just, bounce off his mark and find
And his
himself
strength
in
as
a
well.
yard of
His strength
space.
to
Yeah.
actually brush someone aside and then get a yard on them and get away. Anyway.
Moving away from Adama, because I think that's a contentious issue that will continue to be debated, and it's interesting to see what we do with him going forward, because could be a contract extension, could just possibly sell him on. I'm sure there's going to be lots of clubs interested and involved. But
Sell him on.
let's
Get rid of him.
there we go, all done. Let's talk about another contentious player who had let's be honest, a pretty poor game. Raul Jimenez, obviously standing in for Muniz, who's out injured at the moment. We're not sure if we're going to see Muniz again this season, but he had a number of opportunities that he let slip through his fingers. We've seen it a lot, and I want to shout out something that I know, Dad, you would have seen. I'm not sure if you've managed to see, Luke, but in our Discord, I'll give it an early plug now, but if you haven't already joined our Discord, it's a really great place for lots of Fulham conversations, but an amazing piece of analysis from DJ Welly in the Discord, who we having some conversations around the difference between Jimenez and Muniz, and just sort of comparing them statistically across the season with other Premier League strikers, but effectively looking at Muniz being incredible at converting chances that he gets, and Jimenez actually being really quite poor in his conversion rate. And it's the difference between the two. Obviously, we see that Muniz gets better chances created for him. But in saying that, I think that's actually down to his movement and his positioning. Jimenez this season has done okay, but when you actually look at it, I think someone said that Jimenez has the same number of non-penalty goals as Smith Rowe does this season. And we've been, lambasting Smith Rowe as not performing up to the standard we expect from him. But for the fact that he's scored as many non-penalty goals as our kind of the player who's been our number one striker for the majority of the season, it's quite damning on Jimenez. Luke, I'll throw to you first. It's, coming towards the end of the season. Jimenez is coming towards the end of his contract as well. We know he's on quite a large contract. There's a lot of talk about Fulham potentially wanting to renew that contract. How do you feel going into next season with the potential of Raul Jimenez again being our starting striker, or if not our starting striker, a very heftily paid backup striker?
Look, I think some of his wage has to come into the thought process of him teaching Muniz how to be a Premier League striker, because he's done it for so long. I don't think he looked nervous yesterday, nervous to lead the line. He probably understood the pressure was on him to get what was supposed to be an easy victory against Southampton. So I think he was snatching at balls, and when he actually connected, he skied them way higher over the goal. He also wasn't getting himself in the best positions. Like, it wasn't William wasn't finding him as much as he would have, let's say 18 months ago. I'd be very nervous if we didn't add a third striker to our ranks, if not just to compete throughout the season. I don't think we've got Premier League strikers in our ranks, and that includes Muniz. I think Muniz is still a bit raw. And I think I said this last time, he needs to form a partnership with either the one sitting just behind him or one of the wingers, because that'll help Muniz more, I believe, to be a Premier League style striker. But depending on how much the wage is, I would be nervous if we didn't make any movement in the market and just kept him there, because I think he's on the downtrend of his career in terms of his regular output.
Dad?
Yeah, well, I was very vocal in my disappointment of
On the
me.
sofa, you were,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're right. Actually, it was a pretty small audience, but what the hell? I made it loud and proud. I have talked about this a number of times over the course of the season. I appreciate what not Mooney's, Raul has done for us over the season on the whole. I thought last week at Chelsea, I thought it was really good actually in the first half. Um, but we need for a team that creates very little and doesn't score enough.
Yeah.
What he's doing in the middle of the park and trapping the ball and not always laying it off that well, but actually trapping the ball very cleverly with a couple of defenders are great. But I need a striker that's going to consistently create things out of nothing and put the ball in the back of the net with a really, really high uh, sort of probability every time he gets half a sniff. I don't expect him to be Haaland, who does that very, very consistently. But again, when I compare him and contrast him to Mooney's, who I also agree is not yet the finished article, but I think he's got tremendous potential. And we, as Luke has alluded to, I do agree we probably don't use him well enough. I'm concerned that we continue to stick with Raul and seem to think that either Marco seems to think that he's good enough, or Marco's just being uh, diplomatic because he isn't being given a budget, so he has to make do. Um, you know, we're going to have three strikers. The third one can't be Vinicius. We never use him unless someone's got a broken leg, and he's
No.
just proven that he's not up to it. I think he's obviously vibes around the change room, although I see less and less of that. We've got to move one of them on, possibly two. I'd like Muniz to stay. I think he's really worth investing in. But I think it's a story of more than just our striker. It's about, as DJ Welly, and I want to praise him again for that really, really good piece of work. So thanks for doing that. And what it does is tell us the story of, as I said in my comment and reply to him, it tells us a story that everyone, I think, senses, but is now able to kind of put their finger on with the data, and that is that Rao, he just doesn't seem to convert the few opportunities we give him. Part of that is just his technique, and maybe his aging, form. But another part of that is we actually don't consistently provide good enough opportunities into the box. You know, looping crosses that kind of just hang there, that are very easy for big physical tall defenders to get away. Aren't going to win you games against very good sides. It's just way too predictable, and I just want to see us move away from that. If you're asking me, what do we do? What do we do with Raul? I'd like to move him on.
I think
Vinicius
it's
and Raul out.
the conversion rate for me that's the issue. I'm having a quick look at the stats here. Jimenez has had 86 shots on goal this season for 10 goals, with a couple of those being penalties. Muniz has had 39 shots on goal for 8 goals this season. So he's had, less than half the number of shots on goal, but has scored almost the same number of goals.
And you're not even, sorry, Jack, you're not even talking about the number of minutes as a backdrop to that those two have played.
No, sure. And look, Jimenez has had 34 appearances, 8 of them have been as sub. Muniz, 31 appearances with 23 as sub. He's only started 8 games this season, got 8 goals. So
Wow.
it's a pretty impressive return from Muniz. And what I was going to say is the counterpoint to all of this is from a management perspective and potentially from an owner's perspective, you've got these two players who are effectively sharing the role of starting striker, and they've produced 18 goals off the back of that this season. Most clubs and most teams would actually be very happy with that output. You know, obviously it would be great to have a striker who can by himself score 18 goals. But really, I mean, well, the teams that have done that this season, Salah, Isak, Haaland, Chris Wood, and then actually at Brentford and Mbeumo and Wissa both have 16 and 18 goals. But really, that's your key striker. You look at someone like Crystal Palace, Mateta has 14 goals this season as your key striker. You take what Jimenez and Muniz are actually giving you, and it's kind of right up there at the top end of the Premier League this season. So you can understand why there's an argument to just continue rotating those two, especially when you've got Muniz being so good at coming off the bench and scoring goals, and Jimenez being a fairly good starter who admittedly isn't converting at the same level we'd like him to be converting at, but he is scoring goals for us. It's not like he's had a terrible season. He's hit double figures, which most Premier League strikers would be hoping for. You know, now that he's got a run of games towards the end of the season, knowing Muniz is out injured, he could end with 12, 13 goals if he has a really good little stint towards the end of the year. That's a really good return for him. And if you add that to Muniz's goals, all of a sudden we're talking about 20 plus goals between our starting strikers. It is a good return. So I can understand why you'd look at it and go, right, if we add a couple of wingers who put in maybe some better crosses into the box and potentially, get a few more goals from the wing, we could go another season with Muniz and Jimenez, especially Muniz, a year older, potentially contributes more goals, and Jimenez maybe turns to that off-the-bench player to pick up the slack. I don't know, your thoughts on that, Luke? Do you think we do need to make a change here and sign a new striker, or do you see a world in which Marco goes, that's not a priority?
We either need to sign a striker or a goal-scoring winger. Either or. I do think what they need to do is change the starting strikers around. Drop Jimenez to the bench. He can come on late and start Muniz. If we're going to keep him in the team,
he's a poor bench impact guy, though, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's failed to do it.
But we need to start giving Muniz the confidence so he can build those relationships to move forward. That's all.
You know, just I know it's easy to look at the stats, and that's good evidence, Jack. You know, you're right. 18 from a combined two players is nothing to nothing to be ashamed of at all. The problem I see is that because Muniz because Raul doesn't operate well off the bench, it means he typically starts. Right, and it consigns Muniz to having to make an impact at the end of the game, and the problem I have, and I know that the stats, you can't see that in the numbers, but what really bothers me is the lack of potency that we have and the goal scoring threat that we have up front at the start of games. Makes us really vulnerable to someone nicking one and then changing the whole game, and suddenly we're playing catch up. And we don't have the kind of star power to turn a game on its head with one or two pieces of brilliance. We're a team, in my view, that really need to score first and need to score early. And I think that places us much, much better. And the problem I have with that is that the more and more I see it, and more evidence I have, is that Raul doesn't look like that threat. And I think it gets the fans down when he misses a lot of opportunities early on. When he gets opportunities and misses them, I think the players, the head goes a bit. I think the atmosphere drops in the ground, and I think it just makes it hard. You do need, one thing about Mitro, you always believed, even in the shittest games, you believed he was going to pull it out. And he, out of nowhere, could just somehow make a goal happen against the run of play with three defenders on him, bullying him. Suddenly, he puts the ball in the back of the net with his left foot or something crazy. And that isn't the kind of thing we've got in Raul, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would like to see. It's a tough one because I think we're definitely moving Vinicius on. It doesn't make any sense to keep him at the club. I think it would be almost too big a risk to then move Jimenez on. As much as I would prefer us to do that, I think it would be too big a risk to get rid of two strikers, then need to bring in another striker, and then I also agree with Luke. I think we definitely need a goal scoring winger to come in as well. You'd be basically, cutting a number of attacking options at that point and crossing your fingers that you refill those positions when you know you've got someone like Jimenez, who I think last season he scored 9 goals for us. And this season he's scored 10. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me to sell a player like that who is still actually producing for you across a number of seasons. Sorry, he only scored 7 goals last season, but that was his best return since 2019. So it's one of those players where you hope that we can continue to get something out of him, and I think he's a bit of a confidence player. So I can see us giving him another season, hopefully on a reduced contract. I'd say if he's requesting 100,000 again, like it's reported that he's on, I'd be considering that at that point and going, I don't think we can manage that anymore. And it might be a Willian style situation where he goes away for 6 months, and if we're struggling to find a striker, we bring him back in January. The other player I do want to talk about who came on and kind of changed the game, Smith Rowe. And we've been wanting this from him for a long time, and Marco talked about it a lot post-game as well, saying this is what we want from Smith Rowe, the confidence. And you see as soon as he got that first goal, he almost pulled off a second goal as well, apart from a really great save from Aaron Ramsdale. But Luke, Smith Rowe, his impact in this game is kind of what we've been hoping for the whole season.
Absolutely. And he did it against the worst team, which was good. Smith Rowe, he's amazing talent, but he's just not consistent enough. So he can do it against Southampton, but will he do it on the final day against Manchester City? I don't know. But I'd say to Marco, start him next week. Now he's got his confidence up. Like you said, he could have walked away with 2 goals pretty easily. Let's use him while we can. Ideally, we want him to be our starting 10, right? And he needs to form that relationship with Muniz moving forward. And then hopefully for the next 5 years, they're set and forget. And then we've got some goal-scoring options right up front. And then the rest of the team can look after itself. But it's just with him, I wouldn't say it's a confidence thing. It's more, half the time it looks like he doesn't care that he's playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, well,
he never fights for the ball. If there's a drop ball, he never fights for it. He doesn't care if he takes a penalty or a free kick it'd be nice for someone just to annoy him, just try something, see if they can piss him off before the game and just see if that works for the first 10 minutes, because we need like a beasting in the first 5 or 10 minutes to get the team off and running.
I'd really love to have 15 minutes with a bloke because I can't work it out. And I cannot work it out if he's a lazy little shit or he's got a massive confidence problem. Yesterday seemed to suggest to me that he's got a self-esteem or confidence problem of some sort, because he comes out, he's suddenly all about the tricks and the sublime takedown, and because he's doing it against what he obviously believes is an inferior opposition. I mean, I know he got a deflection in order to get on the team sheet. I don't care. I'm glad that he scored, and you've got to be there and in it to have half a chance of getting the ball in the back of net. So I don't mind that he got a deflection. It was actually a nice move, but yeah, as I said, what I'd endeavour to find out in my chat is what the attitude is, because he does look like he doesn't care. I know so many people, and I know you're one of his biggest advocates and supporters, Jack, and I know Mark is there as well, wanting to give him time, wanting to believe in the story. But how much time can you give a guy? Well, probably quite a lot. If you paid 30 odd million for him, you're kind of stuck with him. Because if he's having a poor season, no one's going to pay more. So you've got to get something out of him. But I don't get it. He's got the talent. He probably looks incredible at Motspur Park. He's probably amazing when no one's watching or when it doesn't matter. But he doesn't seem to want to chase down the second ball. He doesn't seem to want to go in tough. He doesn't want to track back and do the tough stuff that his counterpoint Pereira absolutely does do. And sure, not every player is the same. And if he was just knocking in brilliant goals every week and he didn't defend like Lionel Messi, no one would mind. But yeah, he's got to be able to do that week in, week out, or 4 weeks out of 5. And even when it's not working and he's not pulling off the sublime skills, it looks like he's trying very hard. Otherwise, you've just got to face the fact that that's not a professional elite level player. It's a talent. It's not a player.
Luke?
Agree. He needs to show some backbone, I think, now and then. It's all very well to have skills, but you need to be a Premier League caliber player to play. We're fighting for Europe. We can't have a guy that couldn't care less if we're in Europe or not. If I fly all the way to Slovenia to see us play some team I've never heard of, and he comes on and just dilly-dallies with the ball and doesn't care if we win or doesn't want to play because it's snowing, it's frustrating for the fans. So it'd be nice if he'd show an interest in playing for the badge as well.
Right.
Fire yourself up. Talk to the fans. Play for the fans as well.
He needs to go on a fishing trip with Sess.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's interesting. I see, comment from Steve Reynolds here as well. Saying he does need to be looked after mentally. Class player there, down to him. And Silva sort of echoed that afterwards as well. There's obviously a lot going on with a player like this. Like, he's got some stuff going on in the background. He's obviously struggled when he was at Arsenal. You can see he kind of came to the club a bit of a broken man, it seemed. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a bit of a project for Fulham to actually re-find that player that we know that he could be, or that we've definitely seen some glimpses of. It's about how long we can actually afford to do that, I think, because he's obviously cost us, a small fortune, and we need to see some sort of return on investment from him. And so it's down to how much patience we've got, how much we sort of feel like, not slack as such that we can give him, but in a way it kind of is down to the slack we can give him and how much time we can afford him. I think if we do afford him that time, we will be paid back handsomely for it. It's just about actually how long can we afford a £30 million player to not be performing at the highest level. I don't know how long that is, but I think I personally, and I've said it multiple times, I still want to give him time because I see the player there. I see how good he can be. And I don't want to write him off straight away, basically, because I just feel like the writing him off is the worst possible thing for his future. He has the potential to be such a strong and important player for this club going forward. He's still so young, and he has such ability. You see it often. It would be a shame to write him off and potentially lose that because the club isn't fully behind him.
But just to be really clear, I'm not writing him off. I can see the quality, absolutely, and I think everyone can. Right from the get-go, when he first started at Fulham, and had a bit of a flurry, and he scored a couple of really nice goals, and it was a level of attacking quality that we haven't seen for quite some time, and it was very refreshing and very exciting. And then it hasn't happened. So I'm not a I don't need any convincing that he's got the quality. But what I'm saying is skill and ability is only one component that does not make an elite professional footballer. And the question is not how long it will take. The question for me is, will he actually get there and get all of his acts together? If it's a mental health thing, I've got complete respect for everyone, including him, who's trying to piece that together. And I hope that he can overcome all of that to realize his potential. But I'm not sort of saying I wonder if he can turn into this great player. I know he's got the skills. I don't know if he can actually overcome all these things, regardless of the time frame, and actually produce it at the top level for a club that needs him not to be a squad player with a potential, but to be a bit of a talisman, and actually lead the line for us and be someone who we can rely on week in, week out to actually do the business and be perhaps one of the most important players on the pitch in number 10.
I think we need to remember it's his first season with us too. He's been in the Arsenal system since he was maybe 10 years old, so for the last 15 years or 14 years. So I think it's a big change to set aside everything you've ever known and then throw into which is basically a ragtag bunch of players at Fulham that Marco's trying to turn into a team, and then he's told he's got to lead the line or do what he's got to do. I'm not sure if he's got the leadership capabilities to do that. That's the only thing.
But that's why these players get paid a shit ton, and that's why we, still drive 10-year-old cars, Luke, because that is the challenge at hand, and that's how good, how flexible, how adaptable they've got to be to actually survive and prosper. So whilst we're being incredibly harsh, when someone's getting a 6-figure salary per week, I think we can be incredibly demanding and pretty short-tempered about it.
Yeah, look, I think we're definitely entitled to our opinion, but I also think we may be too quick to judge. And Luke's point there is really well made, because over the last couple of seasons, I have personally, I'm happy to admit, not happy to admit, but I will admit, I said Lukic out. He's useless. He's not working. We signed him. It was a nice idea, but no thank you. And he's turned into one of our better players. I remember, not me, but other people on the podcast saying Castagna out, he's useless, what a terrible signing. Can't believe we've done that. I remember saying Wilson needs to go, and now we're...
Can we just blame Skibby for all of these things while he's not here?
Yeah, it was I'm pretty sure it was Skibby.
Just started drinking too much?
It does.
I definitely sent
like...
Iwobi out myself, so I thought Iwobi should have been gone. After he didn't dazzle me in the first 5 or 6 games, I thought that 30 million was a waste, but like you say.
Yeah, it does feel like there are a number of players who... it feels like Marco's system takes time to adapt to. And I feel like it's almost... It's dangerous for us to make assumptions straight away that players just aren't working until you give them a good solid 18 months often to actually work into Marco's system. So I feel like if next season Smith Rowe's still not working out, there's a bigger conversation to have. But until then, I think he needs a full pre-season. He needs a full off season to review what happened at Fulham and to find his standing with us. He needs a full pre-season with us, knowing Marco's style of play, having potentially a few new players around him as well. And I see there's some potential there. David Wellington joining in on our live stream as well. Lots of people wrote off Robinson. Robinson, I agree, we signed him. And the fact we signed Robinson for something like £3 million or something, and we were still writing him off saying that's an absolute waste of money, and he's turned into one of the best left-backs in the Premier League. It's definitely one of those things where we need to give these guys time. And often a thing that happens with football fans. We're impatient because we want results instantly, and we feel like, similar to when you play FIFA or Football Manager, you sign a player and all of a sudden, yep, results straight away. Real football is just not like that. You have to wait until these guys actually find their feet a little bit, and there's real people behind the players. So let's motor through, because I've just noticed we've ticked over an hour already and there's lots to still talk about. Not that much, but there's a few questions I definitely want to touch on. Quick look at the stats from the game. Obviously, Fulham absolutely dominating possession, 65%, 26 shots on goal for just 5 on target, and I think that's pretty damning on the day. 544 passes to Southampton's 319, 13 corners. Southampton did not have one corner, and I don't think we had any shots on target from any of those corners as well. Quick look at the league table. Fulham moving up to 8th, although that is dependent on Bournemouth, who are currently playing Man United and winning after 55 minutes. So that will see Bournemouth jump above us into 8th and us slip down into 9th. Unfortunately, Brighton managed to get a result despite being 2-1 down going into the last minute, which would have been nice to see us get some breathing space. But Brentford still to play Nottingham Forest later in this game week. So hopefully, I don't want Forest to win games, but hopefully they do win a game and continue to give us a little bit of breathing space over the chasing pack. Quick look at our run-in. We've obviously only got 4 games left this season: Villa, Everton, Brentford and Man City. And that leads us into a question from Dave at Crave. And I'll throw to you first, Luke. What Villa will we get next week? A wounded animal desperate to salvage their season by qualifying for the Champions League, or a shell-shocked team feeling sorry for themselves after their season peters out?
Probably a wounded animal. I think they've got enough players to field a team of attacking prowess that we'd struggle with. So I think they'll be up for the challenge. They'll want to pay back their fans' loyalty at their home ground. So I think it'll be a tough day for us, to be honest. I don't really see us getting points unless we do something dramatic. But yeah, the likes of Watkins, Rashford, if he plays. Asensio is such a good baller. I wish we'd had the foresight to say, let's loan this guy in. I didn't even know he wasn't wanted at PSG. We would have jumped on him straight away. No, I think that it'll be tough. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but they would have to be favourites. I'd expect 6 points from the middle 2 fixtures as we look at it, and the ones bookending it will be tough for us, I'd say.
I think 6 points is possibly enough to snatch a European spot based on the other fixtures that the teams around us have as well. Dad, I won't ask you the same question, because I feel like no matter what Villa we get, they are going to be a very good side. They've got a lot of decent attacking players.
That was pretty much going to be my response. I mean, that's never an easy fixture, and we
especially
can
away at Villa Park.
Yeah, we can make even the shittest teams look impressive on our bad days. So I fear that encounter. I mean, I always look forward to playing a really good, exciting team, because I like to see Fulham face up against and possibly prevail and do the unthinkable. But yeah, tough game. But sorry, Jack. Next question.
Well, I'll throw the other question we have, which was from Dave as well. If Sess continues this form until the end of the season, do we feel like that's one less winger to recruit this summer and one more left back instead?
Was that to me?
Well, yeah.
I want to invest in Sess, not purely for the vibes. I think he's done himself really proud, and I think it was probably a risky move to use up one of the 25 shirts and give him an opportunity. It didn't cost us anything, but it does cost wages. It all matters. But I think that is a Marco success, because I think Marco has managed to reach him. I guess Sess is, you can't compare Sess to Emile Smith-Rowe. Sess has had a career, hasn't worked out he was flying at Fulham, and it didn't work out well for him at Spurs for a number of different reasons. They played him in the wrong positions, lots of injuries, blah blah blah. But I think he can absolutely do a job for us. If not a starter every week in a side that's competing for for Europe and has even greater ambitions, I hope. Um, I I think that there's definitely an interesting project there. He's still very young, and just we continually talk about uh, getting a winger with an attacking threat and a goal scoring winger. He kind of fits the bill. He's got an eye and a nose for it, hasn't he? So yeah, I'd be very happy to see him hold his position. Get
Absolutely.
a different kind of a player in for at left back.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a goal scoring winger. Luke, Sess has actually managed to grab a fair few goals this season, considering he's barely had any minutes. Do
He's
you
on
think
4
maybe?
already.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. I think it's 4 from his last, something silly like four goals and 2 assists in his last 7 appearances in the league.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe Sess is the answer to that goal scoring winger we're looking for?
I think Marco is a manager who loves form. So why would you throw it away and go away from what you're doing if you don't have to? So I think it's really up to him whether or not he wants Wilson or Sess on that right wing. It's not very often you get a player who can't make a team in 14th and he goes to a team higher up the table and then starts getting minutes and scoring goals. So Sess has done pretty well this season. I actually wrote him off thinking it was a really bad transfer for him to come back. So I didn't really understand the process of it, but clearly he loves playing here. So let's keep him. Play him as a winger. My concern will be what happens if we lose Anthony Robinson. Then I think he'll be earmarked for that position straight away. So
I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that doesn't happen. It's
yeah.
not his best position.
No, I completely agree. But then out wide, defensively, we're struggling like consistently every week. We're the worst team in terms of clean sheets in the league, apart from the relegated team. So having an attacking winger as a wide defender is only going to compound on that. So hopefully they do invest. I think we need to invest in that area anyway. Just let him play free. I think he's happy, and if he's a confidence man, then let him do what he needs to do.
Yeah. Yep. No, I would agree with that. I think you're right. I really hope that we don't earmark Sess for a Robinson replacement going forward, because he's not a left back, and I don't think he plays well as a left back. I would love to see him get more opportunities on the wing next season, and I think Marco will hopefully have that in his back pocket next season. But yeah, definitely not our left back. And if we lose Robinson, there's a lot of work to be done in the summer.
How good was his header? My word, the shape on
just a brilliant diving header, and actually interesting because it's about the same height that Jimenez went for volleys for earlier in the game. Sess just has this ability and instinct in front of goal, which is weird to see from a guy who basically was a left back when he first came through the ranks for us. The fact that he's just so always in the right position.
His positioning's good. His positioning's really good.
But he's a great finisher as well. Whenever he gets an opportunity, he's always hitting the target, and he's often converting as well. So it's we've talked about it for the vibes. It's great for the vibes, but the fact that it's actually working makes it an even better decision.
His header was almost as good as his goal celebration. The passion was fantastic.
It's what you want to see. It's exactly what you hope for, and it's great to have a player like that around the squad who hopefully the other players really start to feel that love for the club that Sess obviously has. Guys, before we wrap it up, I will just give the Discord a plug again. Luke, obviously a member of the Discord as well, but we just see some really great content on there, and obviously coming towards the end of the season, we're seeing even more stuff popping up and lots of great analysis. Another big shout out to DJ Welly in the Discord, who put together that brilliant analysis on Jimenez and Muniz. Please do go and check it out. It's in the general chat channel within the Discord. We also obviously are chucking the games up there as well, so you'll be able to follow along live. We probably shouldn't be mentioning that much, but it is a great place to stream the game and be able to follow along. So please do check us out. You can find the links across all of our socials. But guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. You know, it's been good to talk about. It wasn't the most enjoyable win, which is a weird thing to say, but I'm hoping that it's a catalyst for a good run of results towards the end of the season now. When you do manage to rest a couple of players and still walk away with a victory, it'll definitely help us going forward. Luke, a massive thank you to joining us today. Really appreciate your time, mate.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be back on the show for a victory. Come on, you Whites.
That's the ticket. And Dad, thanks for joining tonight.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for staying up very late, Luke. It's way past the midnight hour for you, so we really appreciate that. And Jack, I've been keeping some notes here to the right of me on a little notepad I've got. For the Urban Dictionary, you've made 2 entries tonight, and one of them is twitchability, and the other one is refined. They're not words, mate.
Refine?
Refined.
Refound. Yeah, okay. I'll check those. I'll double check those because I like twitchability. I also don't think I said twitchability, so we'll definitely wind the tape back and double check that one. We'll see what the AI subtitles pluck out from Apple later on. A massive thank you to everyone who joined us on the live stream today. We live stream this on YouTube and on Twitter, so please do make sure you jump on and you're following us on both of those channels. You'll get a notification whenever we go live. Really appreciate all the support. As always, appreciate everyone who joins in on the Discord as well. Please do check it out. It's a great place for Fulham fans in the Fulham community, especially as we come to the end of the season and in the off season. It's the first place to follow for Fulham transfer news. We're very fortunate to have Fulham Fan News as a very active member of the Discord, giving us lots of insider information. So please do check it out. Thank you again to everyone, and as always, come on you Whites.